say, Devore, you got it all wrong. You're just a lieutenant colonel, you're just an intelligence officer. It's true, I only studied Islamic political thought in the American University in Cairo for 6 months. You know, I don't remember my Arabic very well anymore. I can order various drinks in Arabic, and yes, some countries can have alcoholic beverages. I can say a few sentences, and that's about it. But I'll tell you something. The critics say that, oh, if we're not there, the Taliban's going to take over Pakistan, and then they'll have nuclear weapons. No, that's not going to happen. You see, Pakistan also has many different tribes. And the Taliban are predominant in certain regions. I've actually been to those regions. How many of you saw the movie Charlie Wilson's War? Yes. Okay? I was in that area with Charlie Wilson. Okay, I was there. The only thing about the movie that was incorrect is they only had one photo of Reagan. They didn't give him any credit in the entire movie, which really ticked me off. But Reagan had as much to do with it as Charlie Wilson did. Now, the Taliban aren't going to be able to take over Pakistan very easily. Now, if they did, what do you suppose the second largest country in the world would do? Do you suppose that it's in India's best interest not to let the Taliban have nuclear weapons? Mm-hmm. Now, if it's in the best interest of the second biggest country in the world not to let the Taliban take over, why do we need to spend an extra $40 billion a year to add 30,000 more troops into Afghanistan to accomplish what? Other than driving up our deficits. And unfortunately having more patriotic young men and women in uniform die for their country. I don't see what we're going to accomplish. And frankly, I think the President's plan was simply trying to mollify both the left and his Republican critics. The generals asked for 60,000, so he gave them 30. And then he told the left, don't worry, I only gave them half, and I'm going to pull them out. What will that accomplish? This is not Iraq. It's a different situation. I supported the surge because once we were already there, I viewed that as the best way to win and get out. But I don't see where the surge in Afghanistan is going to have the same effect. And so I would respectfully disagree with most of my Republican colleagues on that.
It might if they change the rules of engagement.
Well, there you go. That's another issue. What the military calls the ROE, rules of engagement. Well, we're tying the hands of our military and killing the enemy. And it's causing a lot of problems. It's causing higher casualties. All right, a couple more questions. In the back.
Yes, sir. I would like to know, and this is kind of in the vein of your earlier statement about stopping corruption in our government.
Yes.
What is your stance on term limits?
What is my stance on term limits?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think they've worked.
Amen.
Okay? Let me tell you quite candidly, I voted for the first term limit law in California. And now, of course, I'm in the legislature and I'm observing what term limits have done in California. And here's what I see as I observe term limits in action. What are you trying to accomplish with term limits? You mentioned corruption, right?
Yes, sir. I believe that the longer they're in there, the easier it is for them to get embedded and then have their backroom deal.
See, I would argue the opposite. You want to know why?
Yes.
Here's why. In California, because of the gerrymandered districts that we have, which hopefully we can get rid of.
Yes, sir.
I heard some of you, were you earlier talking about that?
We're involved in that.
All right, perfect. You need to get involved with that commission. Okay, so with these gerrymandered districts, most of my Democratic colleagues, how do you suppose they get elected to their most important election? The most important election, of course, is the first election, the primary election. They get elected to that primary election by currying favor with the unions, with the trial attorneys, and with the environmentalists in most districts. Those are the three power blocks within the Democratic Party. Now, because of term limits, if you're a state assembly member, and there's, of course, a senator above you that's churning as well, most state assembly members will serve 4 to 6 years before they're going to look for a new seat to go to. And because they're only there for 4 to 6 years, what do you suppose they're spending that entire period of time trying to do? What's the next important election to them? Because they're in a gerrymandered district, remember, so they don't care about the general. And once they're already elected, the next primary is a shoo-in, right? So the next election they really care about is the first competitive primary election. And if you're a Democrat, how are you going to win that first competitive primary election for state senate or for LA City Council or for county supervisor if you're in a big county like Los Angeles? Well, you're not going to win, I'll tell you this, by being honest. And you're not going to win by standing up to those special interests, are you? You're going to win by sucking up to them as much as possible. And further, because you're only there for 4 or 5 or 6 years, how much knowledge do you suppose they generate to oversee government? By the time they figure out where the bathroom is in Sacramento, they're gone. I have had bureaucrats that I was trying to push reform on. Remember that bill I told you about that I got passed about the rental? I was fought tooth and nail by the Department of Parks over that bill. And you could tell that their attitude was, we don't have to work with you. We'll just wait you out. Because there are no term limits on us. We're here forever. Until we retire, and then we get to pay for our retirement for the rest of your life. So you see the bureaucrats actually feeling that they have more power than the people's representatives because they're permanent and we're transitory. And so all I would ask you about term limits, even though it feels good to stick to the politicians, is to think about the secondary or the unintended consequences when you do something. Think about the unintended consequences. I'll tell you another measure that I'm reluctantly supporting is this part-time legislature. I'm reluctantly supporting it. Why? Because if we had it, you would have never had Tom McClintock and you never would have had me. Why? I took a pay cut to come from the aerospace industry and work in the legislature. As a salaried vice president of research for an aerospace company, if I went to my employer and said, guess what? I'm going to go get elected to the legislature. We'll work 3 months out of the year, and maybe we'll have 3 or 4 special sessions that I can't tell you about ahead of time that may require me to work for another month or 2 or 3. My CEO of similar things is to think of the unintended consequences about that. I believe, as the founding fathers did, they actually thought about term limits, and they didn't put them in because they believed the best term limit is a defeat in an election. And I think that's what things are all about in 2010. I think the people are rising up and getting angry about
I'd
this.
like to ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your feeling about
That thinks nothing of putting countries like Syria and Sudan in charge of the Human Rights Panel. Wait a minute. Okay, well, everyone should know how to hit the target. And by the way, I have over time earned expert badges in rifle, pistol, and grenade. I don't agree with the tax on firearms. That is
On the tape, 1 minute left, hour and a half tape.
all right, at the back. Yes. Yes, you.